Well, we envision this as a casual discussion. So at any time, you're more than welcome to ask questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end, but at the end of every session. But you are more than welcome to ask questions. Just raise your hand, don't be shy. Let me introduce first Dennis and Corey. Dennis, with nearly 2 decades in the publishing industry, currently leads the online marketing and digital production team within the Penguin Random House audio publishing group. Dennis and the team are responsible for all facets of digital product strategy, development, and production across desktop and mobile. Dennis resides in Westchester, New York, with his wife and 3 daughters. And Corey, a metric-driven digital strategist. Corey is passionate about media and entertainment. She had a birthday only 2 days ago, so we were celebrating for the past 2 days. And since joining Penguin Random House, she's been responsible for developing technology opportunities while exploring and building new channels for consumer engagement. Prior to her current role, Corey worked in community engagement for PBS, where she partnered with the producers for 3 Emmy Award-winning children's cartoon series to develop multimedia projects to engage viewers and launch large-scale fan activation across the country. Corey also lives in New York and is a big fan of 80s rock, post-apocalyptic young adult novels, and she just loves chocolate chip cookies. Okay, so just to set the ground at the very beginning, let's define Gen Z. Let's make sure that we know what everybody has in their mind when we talk about Gen Z. What do we know about them? Why are they a cohort for themselves? And what makes them different than millennials, notorious millennials?
Well, since I have my nice note cards up here, it'll help me along. Gen Zs are largely the children of Gen X, which is what I am. They are born between the late 1990s and mid-2000s. They're fiscally conscious. They're conservative. Not exactly in political thought, but more everything else. In terms of financially, they don't want to spend a lot of money on college, or they don't want to put themselves in debt, rather. They want to be able to pay as they go along. They don't want to take risk. They don't want to put themselves basically out there. In regards to technology, they are really the first generation that are enveloped in technology. Since they were young, they've always had a device. They're a generation of swipers. They know how to turn on a device just by swiping. They're savvy. They're more savvy than their parents were. And then they're multitaskers. They do several things at one time. They second screen, they third screen. They like instant gratification as well.
And when we think about entertainment with this audience, they very much are just overall consumers of all different types of media. They really like their choice, and they like having it now. So the fact that technology has gotten smaller and smaller in their lifetime, they can always have it in their pocket. So we're always very conscious of creating things that allow them to engage in our product at all times.
Yeah, my joke is always that you have a supercomputer in your pocket. Figure it out for yourself. That's what I always tell my team members.
So is Penguin Random House preparing for that generation? How are you preparing for the generation that is in their teens now, but the generation is born between 1995 and 2005? So let's say that the kids born in 2000 are not kids anymore, they'll be 18, and they will be a rising purchasing power in the United States. So how are you addressing the changes in the patterns of reading habits and when they start knocking on your door?
One thing that's very important to us is we like to engage with our readers no matter how they choose to engage with us. And we're prepared for that. So while other publishing houses have scaled back their print operations, we have not. We continue to print books often. We continue to produce audiobooks. In the last year alone, we produced 1,000 audiobooks. We have 15 studios between New York and LA, so we are able to be really nimble and quick in producing that audio content. And additionally, we also create ebook content, so that no matter how someone wants to read a book with us, we're there for them with plenty of options. And as technology continues to advance, we always have our eye looking to the future and figuring out where should we go next and what's the best format to be in.
And just adding to that, some of our best listeners are actually our best readers as well. So we want to make sure, as Corey said, we just want to make sure that they're getting their content the way they want. So if you are reading on your train ride, once you get to the subway, you can't actually read anymore. So an audiobook is there for you. If you're reading the night before and you want to pick up on your commute while you're driving, an audiobook is there for you. We're just making sure the content is provided.
What about the data? What the data shows you when it comes to the smartphone ownership and
Well, going back to our handy note cards here, one of the things that we know from data is that the largest segment of U.S. population that own smartphones is the Gen Z. Millennials before that, but Gen Z, I think it's something insane, like 73% of all teenagers have a smartphone. I think more female to male, it's slightly skewed, but just in general, just that number to me is staggering. For me, growing up, we didn't have it. I didn't have email until I went to college.
Right, and these same teenagers use their phone, 3/4 of teenagers use their phone every single day. And they use their phones and engage online more than they're watching TV. So our content, if it was on TV, might not be digested as much as if we had it on their device in their hand.
Yeah, just looking at this slide, most people are on their smartphone, they're consuming Spotify, Pandora, largely YouTube. I heard this fact that the most recognized brand amongst Gen Z and millennials is YouTube, not Pepsi, not Coca-Cola, but actually YouTube, which is fascinating to me.
You're about to see that. You have 3 daughters.
Yes, I do.
That generation is going to be crazy.
Generation Alpha.
Alpha. 3 alpha females.
God help me.
God help you. So when we talk about the future of the audiobooks app, we see more than ever brands expanding their platforms from websites, social media, mobile apps. But can you talk a little bit more about also your competitors, like Audible or Blinkist, or how the chatbots and voice apps, how they tie into this whole platform expansion and moving forward with audiobooks?
I think first diving into chatbots and voice apps. One of the things we're always eager to do is to learn more and more about our consumers. And the more platforms we start to engage in and offer our content, the more we can learn. And we will then, in turn, take that information and try to surface the most relevant content to our readers. And we can then create smarter recommendation algorithms. So if we know you like Game of Thrones, we can recommend that you'll probably also like this other book that's very similar for some reasons. We can also look at data that we have from co-purchase behavior. So if you've bought this book, you're more likely to also buy this book. And the more and more we can serve up relevant content, the more we'll get people to recognize our brand.
Yeah, just touching on Audible and competitors. Audible is a great partner. They're a distributor of our content. They're one of our largest distributors. And honestly, thanks to them, they've made the audiobook format, they made awareness a tremendous thing in the United States and globally. Along with Apple, Audible, audiobooks is like it's part of the zeitgeist now, so it's great. In terms of the app and its competitors, there really are no other competitors for the app because the app is a very unique thing in the way it works. Audible works completely different, and of the other major publishers, there's really nothing like it of its kind.
Then thinking about smart speakers, statistically, once people start using their smart speakers, they're 70% more likely to listen to more audio content. Mm-hmm. And right now, of those 70%, 18% of that listening time is audiobooks only. Mm-hmm. And if you really look at the skills across, for the most part, Google Home and Alexa, the only way to really listen to audiobooks currently is Audible. And as the platforms begin to expand and more developers engage in that space, there'll be more competition and more opportunities to listen and engage.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, Volumes app is not available in Croatian App Store. So, well.
Sorry.
So tell us more about Volumes app, your goals. Can you make a short overview of the app and the features? Tell us about your audience. What is their in-app behavior, and how do you leverage analytics?
Well, first touching on why it's not available in Croatia. Since we are a U.S. publisher, we largely buy the rights to North America or U.S. only, and therefore our other publishers under Penguin Random House.
Anorak's invitation begins with the sound of trumpets.
Small
the
sample,
opening
sorry
of an
about that. I
old
didn't realize that was
song
playing.
called Dead Man's Party.
This is Volumes, by the way. But just going back to our PRH UK, PRH Australia, those other portions of Penguin Random House, we let those rights go to those guys. So we just deal with the US and North America rights. But touching on Volumes, Volumes was born basically because we noticed a trend in our analytics for our website. We realized that a growing segment of our audience was iOS users. One of the issues with iOS is that one of our marketing tools is basically providing free content, free downloadable audio content, and that doesn't work with iOS devices. I can't put something on the internet and expect someone to download it. They can stream it, sure, but they can't actually take it to their device. So we had to figure out a solution, and Volumes as an app was the solution. And it's become actually a very integral part of our marketing. What else would you like to know?
One thing we find with Volumes, so like when we think of analytics, when we first launched the app, we didn't really have analytics in it. It was really launched as an experiment. If we build this, will people use it? And slowly we have found out that they do use it. In the last year alone, our usership has doubled. Just from promotion, Apple has given us a lot of love, thank heavens, and we've had some really great updates. With some of those updates, we've been able to bake in more and more data, or analytics so that we can get data. And that allows us to serve up more content. When you open the app, depending on the type of user you registered as, we're able to serve up unique content for you so that you're finding what you want as soon as you open that app. Every month, we give away at least one title to every user, and we really see that we promote those titles as we're giving them away, and we see huge spikes in downloads to access those titles. And we see those users are retained month over month, which is great because we're just getting more and more people.
Yeah, when we first launched the app, before Five was on board, we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't have a tremendous amount of data points that we were collecting. In fact, all we could tell you was how many downloads of the app and what titles were being downloaded within the app. But not much else. So we could not really tell like what the consumer behavior was, what the usage was, up until recently. And now we're able to see so many things, especially on the updates that we've been doing. One of the two recent updates that we added, which seem very like commonplace features, but they were new for us, was adding a sleep timer and adding variable speed playback. We notice now that the sleep timer is used. People like to snooze for 15 minutes or they fall asleep after 15 minutes. But it's used on an average basis. What I find surprising, what we discovered recently, is for the variable speed playback, majority of our users actually play at 1.5 speed faster than normal.
Because nobody has time to listen.
God bless audiobooks. I do not listen to that speed. I like it at normal speed, so I found it fascinating. I find it distracting.
You're
personally.
an Xer.
And that's definitely something we're interested in
That's right, I'm Generation Xer.
Your
That's
generation
right.
is looking at that stat, and it sort of makes me wonder, is there different types of books that people listen to faster? So do people listen to nonfiction faster than fiction? And that's something, because of the analytics we now have, we can then begin to splinter out that data set.
And we do see that people like their fiction books. They like their bestsellers. They also like their classics, and those tend to be the free downloads that we do periodically. is we give away like a Penguin Classic or something like that. We also see that people like their business books, and that's probably where we do see a faster playback speed.
Maybe you should just publish quick summaries, you know. Like.
Well, it's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned short form. So we're always looking at different trends in media and what people are listening to, and podcasts have become really, really popular. Thank you, Serial. And as a result, we started to look at the content we have in-house, and we have 3 unique podcasts that are produced right now by different areas of the company, and they offer great behind-the-scenes interviews and feedback and discussions about all of our books. So we thought, well, we have this great listening app, why don't we just throw in the podcasts? So our next update will include the podcasts, and we're really looking forward to linking our customers between the podcasts they listen to and similar books, or if we know they just downloaded Dan Brown's latest book, we can then drive them right to the podcast that feature Dan Brown.
Just to give a shout out to our podcast. This is the author, is one of our podcasts. It's actually the author's perspective of an audiobook narration, because those are the books where the author actually are reading it. And Book Club Appetizer is just per episode, it's basically just talking about the book to give more insight for your book club. And then Beaks and Geeks, exactly what it is. It's just geeking out to individual books. All great content, and it is an added content that we think our readers and listeners enjoy.
Thank you. We're about to open the floor for questions from the audience, so start preparing for your questions. But before that, let's talk more about the roadmap for after 2017, so for 2018 and onwards. So on a whatever you can actually reveal. I know about the podcasts and everything, but now you're only present on iOS, so.
Well, yes, so one of the things that we are looking at is potential for introducing our app on the Android platform. A smaller segment, but still a segment. Either way, we have to address it at some point, because we do get customer complaints about that portion. And then touching on what we said earlier, we want to make sure that we are catering to all our audiences. So honestly, whatever the consumers dictate, we'll have to follow. One of the things, so whether it's audiobooks, short form content like podcasts, we'll continue to do that. 2018 or into the future, I'm honestly, it's not on the roadmap, but just like an idea itself, always paying attention to technology. I want to make sure we're paying attention. I want to make sure that we have the best file formats so we can provide faster download speeds, better connectivity. We want to make sure people can put more content on their phones. We do our best right now, and I think we do pretty well, but the more content and the better UX for a customer, it's better for us.
And in addition of thinking about our customers, we also think about the various ways we're promoting the app and our marketing team. And our marketing team has a robust calendar of events that they go to. So they're constantly at, we recently did an event with the New York Marathon, and when all the runners registered, we were there to promote our product. Every year we go to Comic-Con. And so one thing we've really been thinking about is potentially implementing promo codes. Because imagine there's hundreds of thousands of people at Comic-Con. If we could activate everyone that weekend and give them one free book, then that's so many more users that we can learn from and engage in books.
Yeah, our general mission is format awareness, so an opportunity like that is exactly what we're going for. Finding listeners or potential listeners wherever they are.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Do you have questions in the audience?
I'll start a question. How many people listen to podcasts here? How many people listen to audiobooks? I like you guys.
Anyone needs a book recommendation, let us know.
Yeah. Now your turn.
If you don't ask, yeah. There we go.
I'm wondering, do you have data for users who only listen to audiobooks? That is, you've mentioned that people that are reading the ebooks are also listening to audiobooks. But do you have any data regarding people who only listen to audiobooks? Is it in rising, or is this completely new market?
So the question is, do we have data on that separate segment of just audiobook listeners versus audio and readers? Right?
Yeah.
We do. The larger segment is, though, readers who also listen, but there is a dedicated audience that only listen. And those are people, first off, I'll just start that it's not like scientific data. It's more survey data. I would say that what we do know is that listeners of podcasts are more likely to be also listeners of audiobooks. And we state the podcast first because that's less of a commitment than an audiobook. A podcast is like a half hour, hour at a time, maybe 15 minutes. An audiobook is a much larger commitment. That's several hours, up to like 20 hours. So we do know that people that are more likely to listen to a podcast, or excuse me, people that listen to a podcast are more likely to listen to an audiobook. And then compound that with people that have a device, which is almost everybody, they are more likely to listen to an audiobook too. And I can add somewhat of a separate fact on that is that in the US at least, our typical demographic is college educated, a certain household income, and what we see in the US is that I think at this time, the most people have a college degree. And that trend is only going to go higher. So what we see is, we hope, is that our audiobook listenership is also going to grow with that too. And as long as Apple and Android keep coming out with new devices, I think it's going to grow to be more of an audiobook. But going back to what we said earlier, we love all our content digesters, if you will.
And then I think just adding to that, audiobook listeners typically listen to about 15 audios a year. Right?
Yep.
So that's not necessarily...
That would be the frequent listener,
right,
than the less frequent listener. So again, not exactly scientific, but we know some things.
So I myself don't have time to read, so I've switched to audiobooks completely. And
thank you.
And and it took some time, about 10 books, for my brain to manage to sink in everything I hear. But do you think that in the future, new generations will start with audiobooks and be only on audiobooks? Do you think that maybe reading will decline and using solely audiobooks will be something of
as much as I love audiobooks, I hope not. I do think, and the question, if everybody heard it, is whether or not audiobooks will become more prevalent than books. I don't personally think that will ever happen. I think books will always, the physical book or an ebook will always be an important portion of our culture. What I do see is that audiobooks will become more of a companion to the book format. Again, multitaskers. You're reading at one point in your day, and then you go to the next point in your day where you can't exactly read. You have to be focusing on something else. Audiobooks is a great filler there.
I think you bring up a really good point that it took you a few books to get used to it, which is exactly why, from a promotional perspective, we give away a book a month, because we want people to get used to it. And we're conscious of trying different types of books so that people are listening to various things. In general, we're seeing that our listeners or readers, you have different things going on when you're engaging in the different formats. And a lot of people feel like the physical book is a little more cozy, where the audiobook allows you to multitask, and I can knit or cook dinner and listen to an audiobook or travel to work. And those are all great ways that I can tie reading into my whole day, even though I can't just sit and read the book on my lap.
And just touching on the same thing, but in a different perspective, and going into education. Different people learn in different ways as well. So you said it took you about 10 books to digest. For me, when I listen to an audiobook, sometimes I fall asleep because I'm doing it on the train as well. So I'll wind up listening to a chapter a few times. But in general, some people learn by reading, Some people learn by listening. Some people learn by visual demonstration. I think for certain people, having an audiobook as a component of their learning, I think is important. And I think to some extent, that'll be part of everyone's process, whether it's just helping them learn from a different perspective, but it'll be an essential portion of it, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you please give, thank you.
Hello. I would just like to share a quick story. 15 years ago, there was an edition of a book by Penguin, which I couldn't get here in Croatia. So I reached out to Sharon November, who was then a senior editor at Penguin Books, and she sent me that book. So it made a huge impact and showed what the internet can do. So thank you. I'm a big fan of Audible, and I listen to like 40 hours books every week. My question is, do you have the segment of gamification in your app like they have, like badges? You said you had certain points. Is there any way to share points with friends? I think that's an important segment also. And a third question, sorry, there's a lot of bullets here. Do you have like workbooks and stuff like that? Because I think the most important thing in reading is writing your thoughts out and getting back to certain segments which were interesting. I would say, like an example, there's a book, Principles, now, which is a huge thing. They have a workbook in which you can outline your thoughts and stuff like that. And I think it's a great tool, which is very suitable to other books as well. So, thank you.
It's interesting that you bring up the workbook, because Dennis and I are always talking about the pipeline of what we want to do with the app and how we want to enhance it and soup it up for the future. With one of the recent updates, we added bookmarks. And bookmarks was our way of allowing some of our readers to tag different parts of the story. And it was really the first piece of our idea to also add a note-taking capability to the app. Now, where that is on the pipeline in relation to other things we might implement, I don't know, it kind of goes back and forth. But we do realize that as people listen, they do want to sort of jot along their thoughts, and we really want to come up with a way to facilitate that for them.
In full honesty, we were discussing this at the bar last night.
Thank you, Old Wine.
One of the things, yes, one of the things that I tell Corey and I tell my managers is that you give me enough money, I'll give you the best app in the world. Or 5 will give you the best app in the world, really. Yeah. But yeah, note-taking, be able to provide notes so you can have a clearer reference of why you're noting a certain section of the book, something we definitely want to do. In the past iterations of the app, we just weren't able to introduce it, really just because of bandwidth and budget. But it is something we would love to do. And then going to gamification, yeah, we'd love to do that.
We've talked about that a lot with actually, like, if there's a way to use the accelerometer as you're moving and running, maybe once we're able to track that you've gone X number of distance, maybe we release you a title or a book, or we give you Easter eggs somehow within the app.
Yeah, and Corey mentioned promo codes. Like, that could easily be something that we can introduce gamification to. Yeah. So, like, if we notice, like, you are in a certain location, introduce a promo code, you get new content, things like that. Sometimes it's not actually a matter of technology. It's just thinking of a way, a cool marketing or promotional way to actually introduce that. So, yeah, if we have the tech, now we just figure out how many use cases we have for that tech. And sometimes we already have it, and we'll just discover, oh, we could do that too? Awesome, let's do that. And it's one of the fun parts of the job, actually. And like with the social, we definitely think of using social media to get people into the app. And it's something we're totally actively thinking about now, is how we're using social of our existing users to share out with their friends. Like, I'm listening to Ready Player One right now, you should listen to it too. Which you can do now, but I think we can do it a lot better, given the bandwidth.
Because that's one of the most shared things on social media, so just like a button or add-on or something like that. Sorry, my mind is racing, so I'm sharing. The way we built the app, there's various audiences that have access to the app, and it's something we're constantly enhancing and refining. So as a general user, when you download the app, you have a certain amount of content that's for free and that you can see. But then we also have exclusive user types where we have bloggers and book reviewers
we serve up a little bit more content to them because we want them to write about the books.
Yeah, full
and their
transparency. If you're a journalist or a blogger, like you said, or a bookseller, or just our internal staff, we do have the capability of like turning on special features, so they have exclusive content, full audiobook programs that we refresh on a monthly basis. So we are like conscious of being able to provide more content at certain points. It's just figuring out new and inventive ways of doing that.
So promo codes is pretty much the idea right now. We would have to implement them into the app, and then we'd think of the rollout after that.
Okay, do you have more questions? This side of the room. Yeah, great, thank you.
Hello. Do you have information when and in which situations people mostly listen to audiobooks?
Not scientifically, but yes, we do. We can tell within our analytics in the app that there are a segment of people that listen 3 to 5 minutes at a time. And so for us, that we would interpret that to be like those are the people that are just coming in every time we do a promotion, maybe a post on social media, and they want to like sample a book that we're featuring. But at the same time, another large segment of our audience come in and hang around for about 30 to 50 minutes at a time. And that we interpret, those are our commuters. Those are people that are coming in to the app on their morning commute or afternoon commute, maybe on their lunch hour while they're walking around, and listening to that audiobook. So to answer it shortly, yeah, we do, but we have to take some assumptions as well. So we tend to think that people are listening on their commute. And then they're also just coming in periodically through the day to listen to a chapter or listen to a sample of a book. Back there?
We have one in the, this one, and then we have another one in the back.
Hi, hello. Thank
Hi.
you for a great insight to your industry. I just wanted to, if you could move a little bit on the product management part. How do you introduce new features to the app? Do you do some user testing, A/B testing, something like that? Is it survey-based? You spoke about surveys.
It's constantly evolving. Previously, when we didn't really have analytics or in-app messaging within the app, we were really limited. So we did some surveying. We would just get general feedback and customer service, emails or complaints about various features, and we would then choose to improve the functionality from there. Now that we have in-app and push messaging within the app and analytics, we can see the trends of how people are using it. And we can push out surveys to them, which is really great, and get them to engage with us and tell us what they really want. A/B testing is definitely on the horizon. We're very fortunate to have our own user testing group in-house that we can work with, and they will that will just help interview potential users and existing users and tell us what they want.
Yeah. One of the other things I would add on to that is, up until recently, we were kind of doing it in the blind. We were taking guesses. And you'd be surprised how often that happens with other industries as well. And one of the mantras I always have, and I really believe in this philosophy, is the only way you really learn is by failing. So every time you make a mistake, you learn from that mistake. So, and I impart that to all my team members too, so they don't feel terrible if something goes wrong. Hopefully it doesn't go drastically wrong, but at the same time, if something doesn't work, great, now we know that. And how do we learn from this? What do we do moving forward? So yeah, so as best as possible, when resources allow, testing.
And
That's the largest part of any project in my mind is QA. You cannot spend enough time doing QA.
And in all honesty, the marketing and sales team at Penguin Random House constantly come up to us. They're like, we need to get these books to this group of people. How can you make that happen? And we will brainstorm existing functionality or what we could add in the future and solve that problem for them.
Yeah, problem solving is always something, again, you learn from that. It's a great tool.
Which is what 5 excels at.
Okay, before you continue this, because I'll give you your check at the end. Thank you for the paid advertising. We had one more question in the back. We had one more question, right?
Yeah, hi.
Thank you.
So you've mentioned that your younger readers switch between different types of media often, and I'm kind of wondering and that they're the instant gratification type where they want their content as soon as possible. So how do you solve the syncing problem between different types of media? So if you haven't, you know, left it off at the exact break of a chapter or something, how do you make them, you know, go to the right part of?
So within the app, you can do that. So if you pause at a certain point, you know, logically, you shut off the phone, you shut off the app, and you can pick it up. Going between different formats, we have not solved that yet. It's a tricky technology to figure out, honestly. We have ideas, and again, given all the money in the world, I can figure it out for you, or 5 can. But yeah, no, it's a good puzzle.
It's actually what we discussed over breakfast today. So it's almost like you had breakfast with us.
It's probably at drinks last night too. Some of our best ideas come over cocktails.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming all the way to Croatia, for visiting all the Christmas markets.
No, thank
we
you.
did together. We're going to do some more today. Thank you, guys in the audience, for all the questions. We will take a 5-minute break just to switch our guests here and the gear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.